Welcome to Mind Yourself, a podcast sharing real life stories from real people, alongside conversations about mental health and emotional well-being. Listener discretion is advised, as this episode may include themes some listeners may find distressing. Wherever you're joining us from, whether you're walking, driving, or taking a quiet moment for yourself, you're very welcome here. Let's get started.
Ciara Conlon, you're very welcome to the Four Swans Mind Yourself podcast. You're a psychotherapist based in Enniskeane, and you're here today to talk to us about your experience, your own personal weight loss journey through bariatric surgery. And I suppose that sense of not just taking back control of your body, but taking back control of your mind as well. Can you bring us back to, I suppose, where that story begins then? What was life like for you when you made the decision to do this?
Okay, well, first and foremost, thanks so much for having me, both of you. It's a privilege and an honour to actually get the opportunity, so thank you. So I suppose going back, this wasn't a decision that was made overnight. This has probably been about 4 or 5 years in consideration, but I'm going to just revert right back to the start and just take you on a bit of a journey through the relationship with myself from a very young age. So probably from the age of 13, 14, I was at Weight Watchers. So I know I'm not on my own when I say that I've probably been through them all. So Weight Watchers, Slimming World, you name it, your Herbalife, your Lipotrim, laxatives, weight loss, supplements, the skinny teas. God love Victoria Beckham when she brought out that poo air tea. It literally was poo tea, and that was the truth. I never forget drinking it in bucket loads, thinking this was the magic answer. When I look back now and I think of, what I used to put into my body at no concept of consequence, these fat burners in the US. Probably should mention I was in the airlines for 17 years, so I had access to, not only just what was on the market here, but so constantly striving for this fix. I was always looking for something to help me fix the numbers on the scales. I was constantly obsessed with the numbers on the scales, and I know that the scales controlled my mind, whether or not my day was a good day or a bad day, or how I felt about myself relied on what the numbers on the scales said. So I'd weigh in every week, whether it was the Weight Watchers or whatever plan I was on, I'd weigh in every week. In actual fact, I would probably weigh once a day in certain times of my life, probably more often than not. It was every day. So it's safe to say, I was very much driven by the acceptance of the scales defined whether I accepted myself or lack of acceptance of myself, and how I viewed myself. Now, I wasn't always, I say I wasn't always overweight. I probably always was overweight, but there's certain times of my life when I look back now, I wasn't, but still had the mindset of not being where I wanted to be. Now, it's funny because even growing into my 20s and my 30s, I always had the perception that, God, you look great, you look amazing, you look this, you look that. But I think that came with the identity of I was in the airlines from age 18, and that gave me that sense of identity. That green uniform, that Aer Lingus uniform, created that status for me. That sense of who I was, that glamour lifestyle, that glamorous, that was my mask, that was my identity. I drove a BMW from I was 19 years of age. I was the girl that was known as, oh God, the girl from the Enniskeane, the girl from the village who works in Aer Lingus. Isn't she lovely? The shopkeeper used to always be so interested in where are you going today? And don't you look lovely? And, you know, and that stayed with me for, as I said, I was there for 17 years, and that created a huge part of who I was. But even in that time, my weight still, I was constantly very, very, very mindful of my weight and the numbers on the scales. So I knew I had to reverse back to kind of explain how it come to this point. So that sense of being, I suppose, a prisoner of the scales and the weight fluctuating, I had no problem losing 3 stone but gaining 3 stone. That constant striving for, right, there's a wedding now in 6 weeks time, right, let's 6 weeks, £2 a week. For 6 weeks you'll have £12 off, you can get into that dress and you look this way. Or then it would be Christmas, right? There's 8 weeks to Christmas now, the countdown's on. You know, it was constantly striving for that event, striving for that holiday, striving for that birthday. You know, you'd make a good effort ahead of your next birthday. But it was constantly that negative self-critical talk of, you didn't get there, you just didn't get enough. Or, you know, I'll give you an example, like my wedding day, right? I was probably the slimmest I had been in years, as most of us can relate to, you know. But trying on that dress the day before the wedding, not even trying on the dress, stepping on the scales the day before the wedding to say, right, this is it. Did I meet the numbers? And I was £3 away, which meant I was not in the lower stone bracket. I needed to see 11 on the scales, and it wasn't. It was 12.3. And even at that point, even after getting the dress taken in by loads that week, which was a wonderful feeling, but that number made me tell myself, you didn't get there, did you? So automatically convincing myself, you're not going to feel the way you're meant to feel tomorrow because you didn't do enough. When I look back to the preparation of getting to that number, my nanny's passed away now, and God rest her, she would have said to me, would you sit down with that chicken breast you're running about the house with? Sit down and put some spuds with that, will you, Ciara? You'll have this weight back on before you know it. And she was right. And she, the same woman I have to hold huge respect to, because she always told me I had heavy bones, Ciara. And to this day that I hold that, you know, I had heavy bones, and that's why I'm, you know, I weighed heavier.
I think it's something that a lot of women out there listening can relate to. Getting caught in this toxic cycle of just beating yourself up and never feeling that you're enough because of what you see on the scales. So I suppose how I came to that decision was, I took redundancy in March 2022 after my 3rd baby. And all of a sudden, that identity of the airlines was no longer part of me. And I think on reflection, looking back, I didn't realise it at the time. But over that time, I had gained more weight. I had gained 7 stone in 7 years from the day I got married. I never felt I was even at that weight that I had dropped so low to for any length of time. Because my nanny was right. I wasn't doing it the right way, and it was back on before I knew it. But that was the cycle I had lived all my life. But the decision came when I knew that I had left the airlines. I took redundancy. I now was transitioning to a new career. But I think that identity within myself got lost there as well. And I no longer had that green uniform to create that kind of glamorous attachment to, this is you.
And although the uniform, grew with me, and you'd always know whether you had weight on or weight off with, the uniform never wasn't very forgiving. It didn't stretch with you by any means. Anyone that works there will know that it was cruel to you on the days that you, or the days of the weeks that you knew that you had a few pounds on. The uniform told you. But without that, I felt like the identity was slowly, rapidly losing me. And the decision for surgery was very much in thought after I had Tiernan, my last baby. So that was 4.5 years ago. And the decision finally came when I just knew that I couldn't do another program, another diet. I couldn't return to Weight Watchers. I couldn't do another gym challenge or a meal plan, or there was nothing that I could do that would help my heart and my head get to the place I needed to get to quick enough. And at this point, I had already been 15 or 16 weeks on the injections, so I even tried the injections. But it wasn't happening quick enough for the weight that I was at. And I knew that I needed to say, are you going to accept that you're going to be 20 stone forever? Or are you going to do something about this? And I say 20 stone, it is just a number. Now I can relate to that. But in my mindset at the time, numbers, you have to remember, dictated me. So I knew that it was now or never, and I knew I needed to decide that for this moment, this decision was about me, probably for the first time in my motherhood journey. It was about me.
And Ciara, what were some of the unhealthy thoughts and beliefs? Obviously, you've mentioned about the numbers on the scales, but what were some of those thoughts and beliefs that you were carrying about yourself during that time?
Oh, this is such a good question, because I'm probably going to get quite emotional if I actually explain some of the conversations that I would have had. And this gets me every time. But so when I booked the surgery in the April of 2024, I had booked it and I knew there was no going back, okay? Once I'd made the decision, I knew there was no going back. But I had my daughter's communion, I think it was in the end of May. And of course, communions, events, anyone that knows our neck of the woods, it's very much weddings in the north. They all go out. Everything is very extravagant. Well, it was then. I think we've toned it down a little bit over the last couple of years. But it was very much, what are you wearing? Where are you getting your dress from? What, more so nearly than the child, But the conversation I had myself is, no, you are not getting a new dress. You will not get a new dress. You'll pull out the same dress that you wore to your sister-in-law's wedding, because you're going to get another wear out of that, because you have not made enough of an effort to lose any of this weight. You've resulted in having to book this surgery out of a last means to a last resort, and you don't deserve a new dress. So you'll wear the same dress and you'll show up at your photography session with your family, and you will just get through it for the sake of the day. Like, my emotions took over the feeling that, what is this about? This is about my daughter's communion. It is about her. But there was a sense of me that was just broken. And even hearing myself talk to myself like that breaks my heart, because I know that that girl was so broken at that time. And to look back now and think that that's how I spoke to myself all those years. And that was at 20 stone or that was at 12 stone. That relationship with how I spoke to myself was the same. And now, looking back, if I ever spoke to myself today the way I ever spoke to myself back then, I'd pull myself up brave and quick. or the same for my children. If I ever heard my children speaking of themselves, you know, I wouldn't allow it. And I think looking back and seeing how I spoke to myself breaks my heart for that girl that done that to herself for most parts of 35, 40 years. I'm 40 now.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Ciara. I think that's a really important message. Can you tell us a little bit more about bariatric surgery? It is a big decision. What is that like?
Okay, so bariatric surgery, for anybody that doesn't know, is probably the fancy name for weight loss surgery or gastric sleeve or gastric bypass. Okay, so I was actually booked for the gastric bypass, so I had the choice of what to go for, and I'd researched the options, and gastric bypass was the surgery I was booked for, and that entailed a procedure that actually bypassed a part of the stomach and created a small pouch to bypass the majority of your stomach into a smaller pouch. Okay. Versus the gastric sleeve was 2/3 of your stomach being cut away. Okay, it sounds quite invasive, but the technology today is incredible, and the clinic that I had this procedure really helped me understand the differences, the results, the successes. So the gastric bypass, I think from memory, was 75% of your excess weight loss was pretty much you were guaranteed to lose, whereas the gastric sleeve was only 60%. Okay, and the reason why I'm telling you these figures is because once I got to Latvia, to the clinic, Sigulda was the clinic I attended, and it was through a company called Weight Loss Latvia, and a beautiful lady who helped me make the decision, who's the coordinator there, Ilva. She's such a wonderful soul. I've huge amount of gratitude for her, but also for the surgeon, Dr. Olegs, that actually done my surgery. He actually came on the morning of the surgery after seeing my endoscopy and seeing all my pre-op kind of the internals of my stomach and how healthy my stomach was and how my stomach was able for this procedure. And he said, Ciara, I'm not happy to do the gastric bypass for you, based on your bloods and what we found in your stomach. So I'm quite a spiritual person, and I know that I was meant to make this decision, because what was found in my stomach was stomach polyps, and I never would have found these. When would I have ever said, you know what, let me go and get an endoscopy to find out, is my stomach healthy? So I had stomach polyps, and these have a risk of becoming cancerous. They lie benign for a long time, and they can become cancerous over time. So long story short, he refused to do the bypass. I couldn't hear what he was telling me. All I could hear again was the numbers. No. Sorry, doctor, but I'm here for the bypass. I have 75% excess weight loss in my head. I've already drilled up the numbers of the weight that I'm going to be after this surgery. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't hear him. Again, the mind works in such powerful ways that you don't question when you're so hell-bent on thinking you know it. And he actually prolonged the surgery, and he asked me to sleep on it overnight. So I didn't get the surgery that I was planned to have that day. He came back in the next morning. And I'd done more research. I was over there in a lovely room, doing all this research, bringing friends and doctors and different connections that I had, that I knew that they would help me make this decision. And the next morning he came in, and I thought I was ready to discuss this with him. And he had said, Ciara, I'm ready to take you for surgery. We're ready to gown you up and take you down. The gastric sleeve is the only option that I'm prepared to do for you. Now, bearing in mind, it was more of an invasive procedure, but actually it was slightly less money. So he chose my health and his morals over the decision for, the procedure that I was there for, and, the money aspect side of things. So I have huge amount of gratitude for the clinic that I got the surgery done, for the reason that he chose the morals of, this is the best decision for you, Ciara, because by doing the gastric sleeve is actually cutting away that part of your stomach that has these polyps in. So they can be sent away, get tested, and they're gone. That you don't ever have to be worrying about them anymore. So looking back now, I see it as a huge blessing for even taking the decision. So I hope that explains a little bit around the procedure itself.
It sounds like it wasn't just a life-changing experience, it was potentially a life-saving experience.
I look at it like that.
Did you find though, Ciara, that, in making that decision, that there was any shame or stigma attached to it, or are there any misconceptions around bariatric surgery that you'd like to address?
That word shame and stigma, I think I didn't have the support of family initially. I didn't. And even I was training with a brilliant coach at the time, who had said to me, Ciara, look, we'll get you stuck in with this program, and I'm going to help you prevent ever having to go for surgery. Now, this was in the lead up to the decision, but and I remember him saying to me, you don't want to be explaining to your kids how you're going to eat like a bird for the rest of your life. That stuck with me for a long time, of that shame of explaining to my children why I'm not eating the same portions as them. Another stigma and another shame around bariatric surgery at the time was, sure, it's the easy way out. Sure, it's a quick fix. And it's far from the truth. I'm working with this tool for life. And the misconceptions that I would find is, you can't eat anything, or sure, what would you be eating? Or, how do your kids cope with you like that? Or sure, you can't, I heard you can't drink cocktails anymore, you can't have wine, or you can't have this. Well, the misconceptions are all a myth, because I absolutely eat and drink and socialise better than I probably did before, because I don't have that feeling of, should I eat this, should I not? My body my body tells me. And as far as the kids go, I've been eating off a small plate for years, for about 20 years anyway. That was one mindset thing that I kind of brought into life a long time ago. But no, the misconceptions of anything that's out there is probably incorrect. And I'd love to normalise that, because there's nothing that I'm missing out on. If anything, I do look around and I do think as a nation, we absolutely eat a ginormous amount of food on any given day, and we actually don't need the half of it. And that's not me, food shaming people or society in general. I think as a nation, we've been educated to think that we have to eat everything on our plate, and eat that because you mightn't get it tomorrow. It stems right back. It's rooted in generational, isn't it? It really is. But no, there is misconceptions, but I'm definitely living proof that you research the right place, you find the right clinic for yourself, you have the right care and support around you, you work on the head, and you use the procedure as a tool for life, and work with it through your mindset and your exercise and your training, and you'll abolish those myths and those misconceptions.
How has your relationship with yourself changed since the surgery?
Okay, it's the difference of night and day. That is the truth. And the difference with how I view myself now, like I know I'm not where my end goal is. Like my personal trainer actually asked me there recently, so what's the end goal, Ciara? What's the end goal? Where to next? I said, there is no end goal, Darren. I am a rolling subscription. Like I am on this journey for life. Like I'm not going to show you a picture of this is my end goal, or I'm not going to show you numbers of this is my goal weight. If somebody stopped the clock tomorrow and said, Ciara, you're not losing any more, you're not going any further on this journey, this is it, you're complete, I would be at peace with that. I would know that, okay, that's perfect, because I've got to that place of peace within myself. So how I view myself now is a journey, a work in progress, and that there is no end goal, but that showing up and choosing you every single day and asking yourself the question, what can I do for myself today? How can I prioritize myself today? What am I doing today for myself that's going to bring me closer to where I'd like to be tomorrow, or in the direction of where I want to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Ciara, anyone who follows you would know that you have a really strong focus on holistic well-being.
Yeah.
How has that supported you on this journey?
So yeah, it is true. I definitely do have that kind of spiritual outlook. And probably, like, even in my own counselling room, I would have angel cards and different decks for different people. And I know it's not everybody's love language, it's definitely mine, but it's stronger now than it has been over the years, because like my oldest set of angel cards, I think I've had them from age 18. And I even remember in the airlines crossing the transatlantic, like on a New York flight on the way home, the girls had asked me to do angel cards. So it was very much a part of me then. But it's funny, because if I look at that chapter in my life where I really lost my identity, and I'm going to go back to that 7 years, 7 stone, there wasn't an angel card picked in that period of time. Now I'm very much, I tap into that spirituality. I kind of give up that kind of, I surrender. That word surrender is really powerful. It comes to mind that I surrender that feeling of having to control and allow the journey to be. Because I think for the first time in my life, the tool that I have now is actually matching my efforts. So my training and my nutrition and my mindset commitments are now matching my efforts. Whereas over the years I would have said, I haven't even ate anything today. Like, why is the scales not telling me? Or, it would never match my efforts for how I used to eat. I actually used to eat quite well, So I think definitely finding that place of spirituality within yourself, whether that's in God, the angels, the universe, grounding, whatever it is. Like for different people it's different things, but definitely for me is tapping back into that place of center and place of faith in that the journey will be the journey, and to release and surrender, not try and control it so much.
You are a mother, Ciara, to 3 children, and you said something very powerful here. You said, woman first, mom second. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so yes, I'm a mum of 3 beautiful children, very blessed, very healthy, and different age gaps. So my eldest is Caitlin, she's 13. Hannah May is 10 and Tiernan's 4. So big age gaps and different kind of emotional needs of each of them. And I suppose being pregnant 3 times, and that word surrender is coming back into my head. When I was pregnant, all rules went out the window with my diet and my ability to control the numbers on the scales and control my eating habits. So looking back now, if I was ever to do that again, I would probably do things differently. But there is no more opportunities for children. My family's complete and I'm blessed and grateful. But woman first, mum second, I think comes from the place of making that decision for bariatric surgery. Definitely came from a place of, I'm choosing me. This is the first time, probably since becoming a mum, that I decided that it's my time now. I would have got sterilised after my last baby, so I knew my family was complete. So I knew that this is it now. The decisions you make from here on in are about you. But the mum second for me was, I knew I had to make this decision for me, because I actually knew that I was raising two girls in today's society that I didn't want looking at me, shrugging clothes to a side, subconsciously not feeling good about myself, because I knew they were picking up on it. And I suppose at this point I was doing a lot of, my counselling studies, and I knew a lot kind of around the psychology of how the young people's brains work, and almost the more you know, the more it can be a curse at times too, because I knew I was impacting their view of themselves through my view of myself. So that statement, mum second and woman first, I knew I was choosing me. But I knew by me choosing me in the bariatric surgery, the girls would actually not follow in my self-critical, self-sabotaging patterns. And 18 months on, I can see that with them. They have a very healthy view of themselves. And I know I know it's filtering through, and I'm so privileged to be able to see that.
Ciara, has this journey changed how you handle difficulties or setbacks in your day-to-day life?
I definitely think that I lead a more peaceful life across the board with everything. I think that internal battle of noise that I've had for years, I didn't realise how noisy it was until I got to that place of peace. And I actually think that no matter what hurdle I'm faced with now, it won't ever compete to the internal battle that I have lived all them years. And again, the emotion is raw because it's real, because it's part of me, but I'm so proud of the journey that I've come on. And ironically enough, my counselling journey kind of ran parallel to that journey of losing myself but finding myself. And I think that personal development that comes hand in hand from being on that counselling study journey has really, really helped me kind of ground in the knowledge and daily practices that you can achieve anything you put your mind to, because you've got to here and you've found that place of peace at 40 years of age. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, actually Brian Penny, his podcast, and he talks about that other part of you, that hidden part of you. Like, I would actually explain the part that I have found within myself now is a part I actually didn't even realise existed. So in answer to your question, yes, I feel like I can overcome anything that is thrown at me now. I actually feel this inner power that I can handle anything. There's nothing that is harder than the challenge of battling within myself. Nobody else. It was all within myself over the years. There's nothing that can there's nothing that I feel that I can be faced with that the tools that I used to get me to here can't be used to get me to out of whatever situation.
It's a really inspirational story that I think a lot of people listening will be able to relate to. One final question for you, Ciara. It's a question we ask everybody who comes on the show is, how do you mind yourself?
Well, I do feel like I want to be that pillar of support for anybody that is sitting on the fence, thinking about their next step in their own personal journey. You know, I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of friends and family on the injections. You know, today there's a lot of talk in society about injections, and they're working for people. They really, really are. And, you know, if something's working, brilliant. But I do worry about what is in these injections and what the long-term effects are of them. And I think bariatric surgery has definitely quietened down over the last 2 years since the injections have really come to light. But I would like to think that I am a pillar of support for anybody who's considering surgery. And definitely the clinic that I went to is, I would absolutely hold my hand on my heart and say I would send friend, family or neighbour to, because the care and the meticulous kind of attention that I received was second to none, and even the aftercare still to this day. But I do feel like I want to be that pillar of support for anybody, because I was so grateful of the very few girls that I could actually speak to about this journey, bearing in mind it was a very private journey at the time, even though I was very open about it. But I knew a couple of people in the community that I could ask. So I'd like to think I would be that person that somebody could question, and I would have no problem having a chat to anybody about it. But how do I mind myself today in order to, I suppose, keep my energy high and my spirits high, and, you know, the mindset? I think it is rooted definitely in my spirituality and my ability to surrender what is difficult and what is challenging. So the mindset, the constant commitment to working on your mind each and every day. And if you're falling off track, or if you're starting to fall into a negative mindset, you need to stop, pause, ask yourself, how do I get back on track here? But for me, it would be my counselling work really, really pulls me back into line, because I know I have a commitment there for others, and I know that I cannot do the work that I do unless I'm feeling in the best place within myself. So it kind of keeps me accountable. But I like to think that I tap into my journaling. Probably could be doing it more than I'd like to, but again, that's me pulling myself back into line and holding myself accountable. But meditation, I love anything holistic. Take me to a sound bath, a Reiki session, reflexology, access conscious bars, you name it, I would tap into them all. And I practice, like, I'm trained in some of the modalities myself. But I definitely think surrender what you can't control, focus on what you can, and just try and stay centered in whatever way that feels right for you.
Ciara Conlon, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Thank you so much.
That is it for today's episode of Mind Yourself. If something in this conversation has resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it, because these are the conversations that matter. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, a quick rating or review really helps us to reach more people. So until next time, mind yourself.